Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else, of course. All of you are welcome. Thank you for listening to me. Hello. Hello, my dear friends. Let me put it that way. My name is Sandra Winterberg, and I'm very pleased to say hello to you guys this evening. This is a special day for us because we are part of and guest and supporter of the FemDevs meetup, as you can see here. And I have the pleasure to introduce myself to you at first and say hello and welcome you very heartily. And as I said, my name is Sandra, and I lead the little project called Mediennetzwerk.NRW or Mediennetzwerk.NRW. And I'm here with a couple of my colleagues. Some are sitting over there, and some are at home, obviously, because we need digital support as well. Digital support, creative support, we need good people, and you are part of the big industry of the digital, audiovisual, creative industry here in North Rhine-Westphalia, which is our let's say, our goal to support you guys. Because on behalf of the state government of North Rhine-Westphalia, we are here to support you with your development, your professionalization. You see, English is not my native language. And your qualification and your networking, your connection. And this is a very special event for us because we haven't cooperated with the FemDevs meetup yet. And this is our first time, and maybe or hopefully we can do that again. So what do we do? As I said, we support you guys with your, at first, economic development, but other factors are important as well. Obviously being sensitive to gender themes or to minorities and all the things that go together with it. But I'm certainly not an expert in that, and I'm very glad that we have very special people here tonight that would tell us more about it. And I think our cooperation partner, where is she? Leonie? Here you are, I'm sorry. I was focusing on the other guys. She's going to tell a little more about Maxi and Gina in a little while. Just to remind us, if you have any interest in the Mediennetzwerk.NRW, we have a website, obviously, we have some newsletter, and we do have events that we hope to do more frequently in the summer when it's all a little more relaxed with the pandemic situation. But we also do that digitally. And I would like to put one thing at your attention, which will be at the 18th of February this month, which is called the Mediennetzwerk Creator Day. So for everybody who's also interested in doing content creation for streaming platforms, for YouTube, for Twitch, for Instagram, whatever, please take a look at our program, which was also curated by my colleague Sophia. And we have very special guests there as well. They do have workshops, keynotes, statements, and it should be interesting. It's all for free, it's tax funded. So thank you for the local government here. And of course, thank you to you because you are the one who's paying all these taxes. So it's a revolving situation here. I will stop now. We have interesting things to listen to, which are at least more qualified than my introduction here at this moment. And then I will step back and give the micro to Leonie, who will introduce you any further, and then we see each other maybe even later at the bar or at the buffet. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much. And I'm actually going to leave the introductions of our speakers for themselves, because I think they can present their topics in the best possible way. Yeah, as you know, or most of you know, FemDevs Meetup was founded in 2017 by Linda Rendel, and we used to do traditional meetups. That's hence the name, FemDevs Meetup. Yeah, our organization is trying to represent the diverse developers of this industry, and also aims to give them a stage and visibility. So that's what we're trying to do today. And in the last 3 years, we have focused a little bit more on our online community and our Discord server. We have also been doing online events, but it's really, really nice to be back, at least for today, for traditional FemDevs meetup. And we want to thank our sponsor Mediennetzwerk very much. I'm really happy that Sophia approached us and offered us a collaboration. Actually, I'm a little surprised that this is our first official collaboration because we have met in very different spaces, of course. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about Femdesk, just a little introduction. And yeah, I would give the stage to our first speaker. I think it's Gina first? Right, so please welcome Gina to her talk.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Gina, and first of all, I would like to ask, like, okay, how many animators do we actually have here? Like 2D or 3D? Oh, there are many. That's cool. Isn't it great? I love it. Okay, that's cool. Is any of you a gameplay animator? Wow. All right, nice. Okay, so once again, hi. Before I actually start with the talk, I will briefly introduce myself and who I am. So I'm Gina. I'm a gameplay animator. I currently work at King Games and joined during the last phase of Iron Harvest, Operation Eagle. And currently I'm working on an unannounced project. And I was not always an animator, obviously. And I actually started with studying history and wrote my thesis about Assassin's Creed. And later on, because I always love games and art, so I applied to the CGL and got accepted. And next to these studies, I participated in the games workshop of iAnimate. And after I graduated, then last year in February, got accepted for the mentorship program of the Animation Diversity Foundation. And these industry professionals who are interested in mentoring would provide educational and professional support via a 6-month-long mentorship program for underrepresented groups in the game development. And I just had my final session with my mentor last week, and it was absolutely great. Please check them out if you're interested in that. I think for this year they actually closed this mentorship program, but you can assign for the next time. It's really great. Yes, so after graduating and next to my mentorship, I got my job at King Art. And now we will go full cycle again. Here I am. And that was a bit about me, and I will now tell you a bit about my last year's bachelor project, which is called Why Gendered Animation is Important or Not Important, the evolution and analysis of gendered game animation and the creation of keyframed walk cycles as examples. And during this talk, I will give you an insight about gendered animation. As I only had limited time working on my project, I restricted my work scale, I had to restrict my work scale and mainly focus my studies on the binary representation of male and female characters. Yes. So in the beginning, I will talk briefly about gender theory, followed by a short overview about gender representation of men and women in video game animation. I will discuss the evolution of female gender representation with the example of Lara Croft and a comparison of binary walk cycles created by myself. And with these, I want to show how animation is actually not bound to gender. And I guess we'll simply start. So video game characters are created after the current Western gender norms, especially in animation. One of my main motivations for my thesis was the video of Batman and Catwoman. Probably many of you know this video already, of them exchanging their character models. I will now show you this video, so try to focus on how the character's gender is represented in their motion. And maybe we'll hear it with the sound or not. Well, I guess we will surprise us.
Fresh air, freedom, and darkness. Perfect. How shall we celebrate? I know a couple of poor, defenseless museums. But then again, I also know a couple of hotels.
Tonight's not over yet. There's more work to be done.
Of course there is. You do know how to kill the mood. Do you ever take the night off? Do you ever take the suit off?
Not on nights like this, Selena. It's what I do.
Fine. I guess I'll hit an art gallery or two, while the big bad bat's distracted.
You're not going to thank me?
Why? It's what you do.
Well, that has some nice extra VFX. Okay, so Catwoman in this case fits to Batman's reduced motion. However, Batman walking with a deep hip sway makes the objectification of a female character even more obvious. Beside that video, I also have another reason to bring awareness to this topic. Not this one. When media following gender norms can harm those who do not fall into the spectrum, like non-binary people, transgenders, and many, many others. This can lead to violence against these people. But first, let us dive into this topic. So gender and sex needs to be seen as distinguished from each other. Sex describes the biological differences of female and male bodies, while gender defines a collection of behavioral, also including female, male, and everything in between, cultural and psychological traits. There we go. Men and women should look in a certain way to fit their gender roles. To American standards, women should be young, beautiful, modest, but sexy, sweet and friendly in their behavior, and in general being more domestic or more of a submissive role. Men should be physically strong, dominant, have a restricted emotion, be ambitious, and should avoid any physical femininity or feminine behavior, and violent behavior is part of the male nature being expected. Even in motion, there are specific archetypes in how men and women are expected to walk. Men should be confident with big body motion and a leading chest, while women should move with restricted motion and a feminine hip sway. Missing representation in mainstream media teaches that everything outside of hegemonial gender roles is odd. And according to Heise, Laurie, Connell, and Messerschmitt, this can turn into harmful behavior against them and encourages depression, body dissatisfaction, or even eating disorders. Without strict gender norms, people were more likely to accept themselves and also others. But how can we change it? Through media, yes. According to Heise, Laurie, and these others, normalizing minorities in media leads to change of traditional gender norms. One way of representing characters in animation could be Judith Butler's gender performativity. Therefore, Butler claims that the repetitive behavior and act of a person is what actually creates their gender, and this could be used in animation as well. Let's now look at the gender representation of men and women in video game animation. Gender representation in video games is mostly restricted to social gender. A study by the media psychology teacher Karen Dill and Catherine Till described the typical male video game character as aggressive and athletes with extreme facial features and muscles. Next to these, there often is a wide variety in male body shapes, small, overweight, or characters who do not fit into the hegemonial beauty standards. Female characters often share the same body type. Hourglass proportion, similar height, large bust size, thin waist, long legs, and all within standards of female beauty. Female characters are designed to underline their feminine body shape, even while being physically strong. During my time learning animation, one thing, I don't know if you were ever told that, one thing that I was told was, you need to know the difference of animating a man and a woman. And clearly this is also how many characters for games are animated. Originally, I missed one step, thank you. Originally, character animation serves to communicate a character's personality or showing their skills. There we are again. However, especially female animation is often reduced to their sex, with leading hip, soft motion, and their arms close to their bodies. Catwoman's character, for example, mainly serves as a sexualized object, while the female main character of Dragon Age does walk interesting and in an exclusive feminine way, even by wearing metal armor. Male animation are as well directed by male gender norms. They're animated with a leading chest, wide steps, and big arm movements. Kratos is given a typical angry macho walk, due to his forward-leaning chest and a huge arm rotation. However, even while following male gender norms, there's also a lot more variety in their motion than for female animation. Nate from Uncharted 4 has a leading chest, however his walk is carefree and easygoing due to his relaxed arms and slight side-to-side twist of his upper body. That you can barely see, but it's there. The differences of female and male characters become even more clear when comparing the female and male main character of Dragon Age Inquisition. In this example, both players chose the warrior class. Both are wearing heavy armor and weapons. While the male character has a strong run, fitting to his class, the female warrior run focuses mainly on its feminine aspects. It is completely ignoring the heavy metal plates and longsword she is actually wearing. Possible reasons for this uneven variation of gender representation in video games might be actually the teaching. Animation teaching books such as the teaching book I at least was always told to look at is the Animator Survival Kit. And even while the explanation and the drawings in it are really great guidelines, male characters are the norm, while women are depicted as separate examples in feminine or sexualized movements. With a total of 330 pages full of examples and drawings, the feminine examples are portrayed on only 12. Another reason might be the male-dominated industry. According to the survey by the GDC concerning the state of the game industry of last year, only 20% of developers identify as women and only 5% as non-binary or not even being listed. And 3% don't prefer to ask that. Developers might even animate after the character how they like to look at them. Like the former executive art director at Eidos Montreal acknowledged in 2011 in a panel that every female character, in his opinion, had to be beautiful and lookable. Furthermore, Johnny Vito, author at PlayStation Universe, claims that men are usually seen as a main target group. So companies try to appeal to them by including the tropes of aggressive men and objectified women. Let's now look at an example of how female representation changed over the years, and I hope the videos don't freak out again. The Tomb Raider games exist since 22 years. Therefore, she is a great example to take a closer look on how female character design and animation changed over the time. I divided Lara Croft's design into 3 eras. Each era stands for a major design change of her. In the first era, all Laras have almost the same extreme hourglass body and revealing outfit. The biggest change only happens in the last game with her chest becoming bigger. In the second era, Lara's appearance changed and was adapted to the looks of the actress Angelina Jolie, who played Lara in the movies. Only a movie? I think it was only a movie. Her body became slimmer, while her bust size still stays the same, and the outfit becomes even more revealing. The third area includes the 3 games of the new remake. Lara got a whole new, more realistic look now. Her body is lean with a smaller bosom, and in the newest game, Lara even became really buff, which fits her life as a Tomb Raider. Her outfit is all about functionality, instead of primarily focusing on her sexualization. Great. So let's now look at the changes of her animation. During the first era of the Tomb Raider games, Lara did not have a personalized animation with any sexualized or feminine components, which might also be because of the technical limitations, like here. In the second era, Lara's motion becomes more sexualized. She now has a big hip sway, with her butt mainly being in the focus. At this time, Lara's walk and run cycle are a perfect example of how society expects a woman to move. 5 years later, Lara's whole animation becomes desexualized by a reduced hips ray. Lara still walks in a feminine way, but there are also other noticeable emotions in a walk, like tension and fear when being surrounded by enemies. She would take a hunched body position, move her shoulders up, and look nervously around. Her animation is adjusting to her emotion and also to her environment. And there's again a huge change in the last published game. Lara now walks with confidence. A famous animation analysis channel on YouTube even called her walk a masculine male walk. What they actually mean with it is that Lara does not show typically feminine motion. Her hip motion is still clearly there, but is not overdone, which would make it into a sexualized hip sway. Her walk now is strong and grounded, which is an attitude not necessarily attributed to masculinity or masculine walk. Together with the grounded hip motion, she also moves with a more masculine seen chest. So the description of Lara as masculine makes it clear that gender actually can be animated separately by sex. Overall, sexualization animation seems to change. During a study by Theresa Lynch and others, the sexualization of female characters could be measured. Therefore, they analyzed 571 games from 1983 to 2014. The study showed that female characters were especially represented in a sexualized manner between 1992 and 2006, while it was declined from 2007 to 2014. Even if it is happening slowly, game development really is changing its way of representing gender in animation. So in this part, I would talk about self-made or my self-made keyframe walk cycles. By creating these walk cycles, I want to prove why gender does actually matter for animation. My plan was to create different gender stereotypical walks. The neutral walk cycle would be very basic to show the difference compared to the more extreme walks. The hypermasculine walk would be a representation of how social norms expect men to walk, like in real life, as well as in video games. The sexualized walk would be representing the objectification of female motion in video games. To visualize each of the wigs with a gender, I'm sorry, I lost my line. These three walks will merely be used for comparison to visualize each of the wigs with the gender non-conforming walk cycle. So in the beginning, and I actually wanted to include a non-binary wig, and especially for more inclusion in animation. Additionally, my whole thesis was about leaving gender boundaries behind, so it was only natural for me to include a non-binary character next to binary ones. However, as my scope of this project grew bigger and bigger over the time, I sadly had to reduce the workload again and only concentrated on 2 wigs instead of 3. And as female and male characters are still the binary standard in games, I decided, well, sadly, to remove the non-binary wig. But at this point, I really want to shout out to these developers who created the non-binary wig. I will also post or you will also see the link later on if you haven't already seen it. It's currently the only free non-binary wig that you can find on the internet. It was done by great game developers. And it's super great to use. So if you're interested in that, I will show that later. So before gathering references for the walk cycles, I found out what exactly I need for the neutral, hypermasculine, and sexualized walk. Therefore, I reused my research about how the walk of men and women are portrayed in video games. So let's start with the comparison. Both walks are powerful. The hypermasculine walk works for both male and female wigs, even though the reference was done by only a man. In the sexualized walk, the hip sway has a main focus, which recreates the illusion of her sexiness being a character trait. This representation of women we find quite often in media, whereas to the male sexualized walk, it occurs very rarely, although I don't really think I've seen it so far, but it actually adds an interesting twist to the male character in this case. While the hypermasculine walk on a female character gives her the character traits of aggression, determination, strength, the primary focus on the sexualized walk is her objectification. And again, there's a clear contrast between the two walks on the same rig. While the left walk is typically masculine, the sexualized walk moves away from every gender bias of men needing to avoid every kind of feminine trait. Comparing all three walk cycles of the female character, the hypermasculine one sticks out the most, as the hypermasculine one belongs to another motion group. Every walk fits to the female rig, although the sexualized walk underlines ceremonial gender norms and also depends if it really fits into the game and its environment. Like with the female rig, the gender atypical walk stands out. The sexualized walk is an interesting walk for men, however, it would not fit into every game. And again, we have the issue of sexualizing a character. Just like Catwoman's sexy walk is very out of place in the Batman games, Link with a big king string would be unfitting in a fighting game like Legend of Zelda, although it would be very fashionable. As animation would base primarily on the sexualization. Nevertheless, the sexualized walk works for male characters just as well as the hypermasculine walk. After looking at each animation, I can say there is indeed a connection between gender and sex due to the center of mass each person has. The center of mass is different for men and women. This is also the reason why hip swing is assigned to women due to their pelvic hip rotation range than men. However, studies already prove that pelvis rotation only increases in age. Especially young men and women walk according to the study by Kerrigan, Lillis, and Smith, almost similar. So one hypothesis is that the bigger hip rotation resides due to social pressure on women needing to walk feminine. The representation of only feminine women games also doesn't really correspond to reality. Animation should strive to create a variety of gendered animation for all characters, create more representation and help change current hegemonial ideals and the associated bodily harm, stereotypes, mental health issues, and exclusion of minorities. So my thesis question was, why gendered animation is and at the same time is not important? And I will now answer that. So gendered animation should not be important in case of reducing a character's gender and therefore their motion to their sex. This supports contemporary hegemonial ideas of Western society, which excludes any minority besides straight, cis people and can lead to violence and mental health issues. Instead of representing biased gender norms, their representation should show more variety. Because gendered animation should, and it absolutely does matter. The Western video game industry has already created great examples of gender performativity, like, for example, the newest Lara Croft game, or even the two female leads, Ellie and Abby, of The Last of Us 2. The two female leads are outside of the typical spectrum of feminine character walks. Ellie walks according to Western society in a more gender-neutral way, while Abby even has a more masculine walk with traits like a leading chest and strong shoulder movement. While there are even more examples of female characters having performative walk cycle, male characters seem to lack this development. Male character animation and character design already have a wide variety. However, they are all still in the category of default, Western, mostly cis characters with masculine traits, like this. This could be already argued, including gender performativity in walking more aggressive, silly, or even with more reduced motion. However, they all avoid feminine attributes or show unmanly emotions like fear or being lost. In contrast to the amount of studies on the sexualization of female characters in video games, there are only a few studies that deal with the consequences of the persistent hegemonic masculinity and call for change. Unfortunately, following this all up was as well beyond my scope of my bachelor project. Coming back to this sentence, you need to know the differences of animating a man and a woman. Knowing how to animate different genders in itself is not wrong, but definitely has way too many boundaries, so I would phrase it differently. Why and what is its purpose? Why does a character, regardless of their gender, do something or move in a specific way? Is it because of a heavy weapon, an old injury they suffered, or because of the number of enemies they are surrounded by? What is the purpose of showing this in their motion? If you look at these animations again and asking about why do these characters move like this, what is its purpose? I would argue that Catwoman's walk does fit her character, however is clearly sexualized and therefore plays into harmful stereotypes. The purpose of the Inquisitor walk is simply to look feminine, without including the weight of the armor or the weapon. This is not a warrior. What is the purpose of Kratos' walk? To look angry, which is absolutely perfect for his character, whose goal is revenge. Same with Nathan. Like I already mentioned before, Nate is an absolute carefree character in the games, and you can clearly see that in his walk as well. You always have to look out what you want to achieve with your animation. Therefore, there are not only feminine moving women or masculine moving men. Same as not all women move in a masculine or non-binary characters move in a neutral way is the right choice. It is important and also way more interesting to not only animate in the boundaries of gender norms and support stereotypes. Like in real life, there are women, NBs, men, transgender people who walk regardless of their gender with the hip sway or leading chest, either subconscious or by choice. I, for example, myself walk with a huge hip sway, which I only noticed once I started filming myself for references for animation and noticed this is actually not how I want my character to look like, so I need someone else who walks without it. Animators are storytellers. You have a strong non-binary warrior, animate them with a leading chest and a powerful walk. You have a male soldier in a fearful situation, go get the shoulders up and actually empathize that this character is really fearing fear. Just wanted to click that video for you again. Like in real life there, I'm sorry. There we are. You need to know the character's traits, their skills, their emotions, their feeling, and know how to apply these in your animation to tell these to the players, regardless of their gender. Think about why the character does something. Not why because of their sex, but what drives them and what is their intention. My first mentor at this game workshop told me something which I've never really forgotten since then. And he said, we animators are the guardians of these characters. We are the ones bringing them to life, and therefore we should always keep an eye out how they will be represented and how this might affect our society in a positive as well as a negative way. Now, Ashley, thank you for listening. Here are all the references I used. There are even more. There we have the lyrics. Please, like you can also search for this. I'm so sorry, Chic. I think it's the character's called Chic from there. Really do love that rig. All these rigs are great. So thanks again. If you have any questions or anything to add up, I'll gladly try to answer or hear everyone out. If you want to share your own stories and of any kind of situation regarding character animation you had at work or maybe during a personal project, university, wherever, be it positive or negative, I would love to hear it. Yes, thank you. And sorry for the videos not being perfect. That was interesting. So correct me if I'm wrong, the question was how to animate a character and keep the personality of the character with, for example, having a low budget and therefore not being able to polish the character as perfect as it would be with a bigger budget. first of all, it depends on what kind of, I would say what kind of art style you have as well, because I mean, I mainly do 3D art. I don't know how it is for 2D art. For 3D, even if you have, for example, very low resolution game, like very, very stylized, not even having a face or something, there's still, you can still add up to your character. In animation, there are different steps on how, like different phases. Okay, this is the main phase of very, very blocky. Okay, here we have more details, and then you have the stage of getting it shippable, and then having it fully polished. You can stretch how much detail you want to put into this. But for example, if you want to have a character, what I said before with fear, what makes it fear? Okay, you have a hunched body. You keep the shoulders up. This does not really have to be fully polished, especially if you have, for example, I mean, it was if you have someone with experience, you can do it quicker. But even then, I would say check in the beginning what makes out your character. Define it by words. My character is this, and my character is not this. And then actually seek out, okay, my character is this, not this, but what makes this it? What kind of emotions or what kind of motion does lead to, for example, having a carefree character? Okay, but what does a carefree character have? Well, loose arms, being a bit fluid in your motion, and then you already can give it a bit to it. And I would say you don't have to polish up any animation. You can give so much expression into so few animation. Yes. So the question is,
could that be also a relation between why we nowadays see more, like less distinctive movement, while in cartoons it was more distinctive movement, also like, right?
Okay, let me rephrase it to fully understand it. So right now, the motion, right now, as games shifted, the motion also right now becomes more reduced as companies are using more motion capture, as to companies who before did more keyframe and therefore more comically and exaggerating specific character types, as in, for example, their gender. This is a statement. The question, therefore, is what I think. All right. Now I got it.
Just what I'm saying, like, or what I'm trying to say is, like, let's say in the 90s, 2000s,
yes.
2000, when we said like it's mostly male or industry or male-dominated industry. All these animations were basically imaginations of men how women should be, right?
Yeah.
Well, nowadays we have more action performers, right? Actors,
Yes.
female actors, doing these movements, right? So it's not in their interpretation anymore. It becomes like more a picture of reality.
I assume, well, as games are not really anymore like garage projects by people who actually, well, I mean, they still are, that's not it, but by now it also really became an industry. And therefore, especially with the shift to motion capture, which is an easy way to create to gather quickly a lot of motion capture, I think therefore that is one specific type, one specific thing why there, for example, in this case is more motion capture, but also the direction of game companies wanting to be in the more realistic area, especially as players are also kind of asking for it in case of we want better graphics. Like seeing how far can the technology actually take it, because right now what I felt like when for example the announcement for Unreal Engine 5 came, it's like, oh, but how photorealistic is it now? Like how much more does it look now? Also with PlayStation 5, and then people complaining, oh, it does not look that much better than PlayStation 4. Well, yeah, how much more realistic can you actually get? I think that one is one aspect of it, as well as people. This is only an assumption. I guess people are also becoming more aware of certain things. So, for example, creating a character, like over-exaggerating stereotypes is not what many would actually like to see. And also, in this case, what I also heard from friends of mine, that their companies, when, for example, creating a character, they would ask them, like, hey, this character is like identifies as non-binary, same as you. Can you please give us your input on this? Because we want to hear your opinion about this, because you're the one who can actually tell us how to do this, instead of, for example, me, who I wouldn't have done the non-binary character if I would have animated it, because I'm not non-binary. So I think it's many different things of people becoming aware of this topic, which is great. Also with the need of the market, as well as having everything very, very quickly, because keyframe takes time. Motion capture also needs a lot of attention, but keyframe is kind of feels like people assume it will take longer. Does it answer the question? No, maybe I okay. This is my assumption. This is not an answer to your question. This is my assumption. I don't know. Maybe somebody else has a good assumption as well. Yes. Absolutely.
Just gonna make the switch really quick. Thank you very much. That was really interesting. And yes, we're gonna be around here. So if there's any more questions, feel free to contact Gina here or after the event. So yeah, let's move on to our next talk by Maxi.
So thank you, Gina. You've laid the groundwork for this talk way better than I could have. It's a more personal talk than informative. So there will be slides, not very academic, so to speak, but you know, there will be slides. We'll click through them sometimes. You can look at them, they're pretty, they're blue, my favorite color. So, yes, exactly, that's it. They have good taste. So anyway, welcome to being LGBTQIA, I know English, AA plus in games. My name is Sandra or Maxi Molina or Sandra MJ Dev. You can follow me on Twitter. You should follow me on Twitter. And yeah, for anyone who doesn't know me, I've been working on games for some 9 years now. I forgot how many. Before that, I used to be in comic. I worked for DC Comics, Blizzard, Dark Horse. I used to be to the artist as well. Nowadays, I do work as a creative director, art director, voice director, casting director, writer, solo dev. Point is, I've been around the block. None of it prepares me to talk about being LGBTQIA+. It's a long word, so from now on, it's queer. If I say queer, I mean LGBTQIA+. Okay, queer. If I say queer, it means the long word. Just so I don't have to say 5 seconds of a word every so often, okay? Queer, LGBTQIA+. English is not my first language, I'm very sorry, I'm Spanish. So yeah. I'm going to be your host and moderator, because it's a more personal talk. I want this to be a space where we can share experiences rather than just me telling you what it's like to be queer in games. Woo, it sucks. No, that's not what I want to do, right? I want to share here. I want to give you all a space to sound off and, you know, If it turns out it's just me and 3 people more here, okay, maybe we can expand, make it more about, intersectionality. That's a word that will come out later. So maybe we can expand experiences to share more stuff. But, Anyway, in case I hadn't mentioned I'm trans. My pronouns are they, he. I requested that everyone word their pronouns because it helps normalize this stuff. Gina already did a wonderful job of mentioning that gender and sex are separate and why. But yeah, if you make a mistake with anyone's pronouns, you just say sorry and move on. Not, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. No, you say sorry, my bad. Move on. I didn't mean, it's so difficult these days. Oh my God, stop, I'm so sorry. So anyway, let's get some concepts ironed out before we move on, okay? Basically, in this talk, we will discuss 3 concepts. I need to breathe. Issues and discrimination we face as queer devs in this industry, all right? So, kind of, the more pessimistic stuff, because we have to face that it's a harsh reality sometimes. But I don't want this to be a bummer. There's so much good stuff that comes from being in gaming spaces. We all find out so much positive space from gaming, from game dev, from the community. We all have learned so much stuff about ourselves and the friends we've made. There's so much we can learn. Lastly, okay, so anyway, and lastly, why? It's not helping me. And that's the tips to make spaces more welcoming, because it shouldn't be us pulling all the weight. It should be up to allies to help make spaces more welcoming for all of us. And I want it to be a space where we can help allies who want to help us better. Yes, that makes sense, okay. So, all right. First off, it's, when we're sharing stuff, this is a reminder, because I didn't know how many people there will be here. When we're sharing stuff, it's very easy to get lost in the moment. It's a recorded talk, you can see the cameras right there, so keep it vague, change the names, change the context. Don't share anything you don't want to share. I will be your moderator, but a few self-moderation requests. I don't think anything is getting recorded. That's not going through my mic, but we may be treating potentially triggering content, but the purpose of the talk is mainly informative. That is to say, this is not a therapy session. Keep it light, please. So don't go too deep into it. Don't go into a very dark form. Keep it light. Keep it shareable. Keep it, it's divulgative. Don't go into a place you can't come back from right now. There's support groups. There's professional help you can seek if you need to. But right now it's community, a more light version of it. And this is something I run into a lot. Avoid repeating insults or slurs you hear. And this is mostly for allies, because it's a lot, like, you're sharing a story and you're like, oh yeah, I got called that. Don't say it, I don't want to hear it, I don't care. Don't, okay? First rule, this should be actually right here. If you're sharing a story, don't say the thing don't share the thing you got called, okay? Don't. Okay? Are we all clear? Say okay, please. Okay, that was a little sad, but I'll take it. Okay, so facts first. Gina did it much better. Anyway, things have never looked very good for marginalized people in games. My research wasn't very like sure of it, but between 1/3 and 1 in 2 women have shared that they have been harassed in some form in games and game dev spaces. And just this year, this is all research from this last year. And this is gaming and game dev. And when I tried to look for more specific queer experiences only, I only found 2 articles. That was it. That was all I could find was between 1/3 and 90%, which is a jump. There's quite a big jump in those 2 data numbers. But there wasn't a lot more to go off from. And you wonder like, why are things so bad? Like let's suppose things really are so bad as they are in this number. Is it the right? Yeah. Let's suppose things are so bad as they are here. Isn't there more content and awareness for marginalized gamers than there were before? Well, not much has changed when it comes to hiring marginalized devs into positions where they can make any difference, right? Like, actually, this data came up in the previous talk. 73% game industry is men, 21% were women, 3% non-binary. And that's not even saying how many of those are seniors, how many of those are CEO, how many years have any of those people been in the industry? Like, where are they working? I have no idea. There's no data to back that. Like, how can I place those people? I don't know where they're working. I don't know where they are. Who takes decisions here? I have no clue. Cannot tell. So part of why it's so hard to tell, like, I don't know, like, how many of those women from the first slide there are queer people who are also being harassed, right? That they could be very well overlapping. And that's what I was getting back to. Understanding the overlaps is very important. There's a concept called intersectionality that I mentioned before. When we talk about the harassment of minorities, we never talk about isolated experiences. They all intersect in some way, right? So you look around the room, right? Count the women. Some will surely be queer women, disabled women, women of color, any combination of them. You shouldn't be assuming they're women. That's a problem. That's a problem we will get back to in the open mic part. But, like, for the purpose of this talk, cooperation between these overlapping marginalized identities is the basis of intersectionality, right? That's very important. Intersectionality is the basis of so many movements that have changed the world for the better. We are never alone. There's a strength in numbers, in cooperation. And despite this, it's fine to acknowledge that there are challenges that we face within our own communities that are not equal. Privilege comes in different forms. We all face different challenges. The challenges I face are not the same challenges other people face. And privilege is a very scary word for a lot of people. This is a very, very scary word for a lot of people. It's like, privilege, what does this mean? You're saying my life wasn't hard? No, that's not what privileges mean. Privilege means that it wasn't made harder by a particular aspect of it, such as gender, religion, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, which is the purpose of this talk, class, nationality, abilities, and learning to look inwards and recognizing this privilege is essential to start opening up and you actually listening like, so wait, you're telling me there's a problem this number of people are facing and I'm not? But you are all here in a FemDevs meetup, so I'm pretty sure you all know about this. So with all of this is like the first part of the talk. This is I'm not going to say academic because I never went to college, so if I say academic, but it's the more expository part. Now we're moving to the open mic time, where I actually want to pass the mic on to all of you. I want to hear what sort of issues you have faced as a queer dev this is a space where we can share the challenges that are exclusive to our own experience. Okay? I don't care about your gender. I want to make this explicit. I don't care about your gender. I just want to hear about anyone who is queer. What are your any challenges you've faced in gaming or gaming? It doesn't have to be in the industry. It has to be anything related to gaming specifically. So if anyone wants to go first, if not, I will tell a very silly story to begin this. The other day, I was in some VR chat knockoff, and I got surrounded by a bunch of guys, and I was in some kind of like guy avatar, and they're like, "Oh my God, you are so young." I'm like, "No, I'm not." "Yeah, you're so young, don't lie." "I'm not young. Where are you coming to? What's going on?" Yeah, you're so young. "What are you, 14? I've been working for 9 years. What's wrong with all of you? This is a professional environment. What are you doing here?" "Yeah." I go, "See, you're wearing a guy avatar. What are you, 14? Why did your voice never drop?" And I realized these guys actually like they don't realize I'm trans. They actually think I'm a guy who never like. They're like, I don't know how to feel about this. And like I was there like thinking about it for a good while. Like, I feel so weird right now. Like, do I feel weird about the fact like a bunch of guys were trying to think like until I said I'm not. I'm a woman. Oh, okay, never mind then. And then I had to come out as I had to say no. I'm not a guy, guys. I'm fine. It was like an actual professional environment, and I had to just say like no. I'm not a guy, for them to leave me alone, something like that. People are very weird about voices in even game dev. So anyway, does anyone want to share stuff? Oh, Gina. Should I take the mic? I have no idea. What do I do? Oh, okay. Do I repeat? So we get one story where one friend of the person telling the story. What's the name? Huh? Yeah. We get one story of one work friend coming out to the person telling the story, where they realize that this person is very uncomfortable with coming out. And they're coming out to the speaker, and the speaker is always talking about being queer. And they realize, wait, their friend is so uncomfortable because they're afraid of maybe if they come out, there will be problems in their work, or maybe there will be problems in their spaces, there will be problems the speaker has never had with being openly queer. And that had never been a problem for the speaker, and that's something they had to come to terms with, they had to think about. Well, yeah, I think if we use the mic here. No, it's a corona, yeah, it's fine. So another speaker shares this story where at Gamescom they got challenged, but this buff energy drink seller who was like, "Yo, don't you want some free energy drinks?" And they were like, "No, don't. You have to do some push-ups to get them." "I don't want to do push-ups right now. Aren't you a real man?" And then they realized, like, what does it mean to be a real man? And they got some questions about gender, and but like their friend did push-ups and they got free energy drinks. And, that's good. They were happy about the energy drinks, and they got gender feelings, which is good. Those are good things. Anyone else?
Yeah, totally, man. That was cool. But it was surprising because it happened twice. Yeah.
Right, so an ally tells a story, which is very close to my own story, which is, she tells a story of a friend of hers. Well, this happens twice, where, the two friends came out to her. They came from small villages, and they came to her same university, and came out to her, which was very surprising to her because they hadn't spoken they hadn't spoken for long, but they came out to her she was the first person they came to, and she was surprised about this. But they felt safe coming out to her, and this is a very common experience. Many people don't have the support network to come out to anyone. And this is common in job spaces, in college spaces, in a lot of places. It's hard to find someone you find close enough to come out to, because every time you move works, every time you move grades, every time you move to a new place, you start from zero. You come out all over again. If I tell everyone in my job, I'm trans, and they say, cool, the next job I'm starting, I have to say again, I'm trans. And the next time, I'm trans. Until someone says, well, I hate you. And it only takes one person saying, I hate you, for me to have to say, oh shit, again. Okay, cool. Sorry for swearing. Right, and you never know who's going to say, I hate you, I'm going to ruin your life, right? I always live with that fear. And I try to explain this to people who are like, oh, no, that's no, people love you. It's like, yes.
I have a big problem with such job that stand diverse and man and male and female. Why they don't do this? Why they don't get female or male? Is this really important for a job? For all jobs is why it looks so strange when they stand their search gender, because it's not important male, female, or gender. So it's not important for is it a woman or is it a man. That I in my mind that's not important. Why they stand in this? I'm sorry.
You're asking why is it important to ask for a certain gender, or?
Do you mean why do they even ask male or female and not just only for? Warum steht da? Why don't they leave out the question for gender at all in the job search?
You're asking why don't they leave the question about gender in the job question, but it's not about the job itself. It's like when I go about my day, they're going to say, "Hey Sandra, hey, everyone say hi to her," and I'm like, I'm not her, I'm him, and it's going to be like, oh Sandra, you're such a cool woman. I'm not a woman. It's going to be very awkward every time. Every single time it's going to be very awkward. And it's a constant uphill battle where I have to say this every time. Imagine a field of very tall grass, right? And I have to, mow the lawn every time. And I mow my lawn. And then it's all cool, my lawn looks very cool, great garden. and I move houses, and I have a new garden, and I have to start all over again until I run into a rock and the machine breaks. You know what I mean? So you never know when you're going to run into the rock that breaks the machine. And that's a danger I run into every time, right? So that's one example, that's my experience.
I have a question related to your story, because you mentioned you got lots of different jobs in different positions. Mm-hmm. And did you have a lot of rocks on your way? Because the story you told, it was like side story, I would say. But you personally, what's your biggest rock?
This question is what's been my biggest rock relating to this previous side story. I've had several people, because I've worked with overall remote teams, but I've worked with like people who have been like non-binary. What is that? Oh, this younglings inventing new things, and I'm like, well, I'm trans. Did I mention I'm trans? And they're like, oh, so what? You have a thing there, down there, and I'm like, does it sound like a good question to ask in your mind? Does it sound like a good question to ask to you? Does it sound like a good question to ask? Or a coworker once asked me, like, I told them, like, yeah, I'm bisexual. Oh, so you sleep with a lot of men and women? Oh, did you sleep with that woman? What? What kind of question is that? What? Why would you ask that? It's people ask the weirdest question. People get so weird about these things. Like, you wouldn't believe. Some people kind of lose all sense of like what's okay to ask because they're like in front of a unicorn. It's like, oh, it's one of those cases. The trans. My God, I have to ask. Google exists for a reason. So, with that said, if anyone has any last stories, if not, oh, Mary. Another speaker has shared a story where it's a common life story where it's like they realize that something that was common for them, which was growing up with queer people around them, when someone came out as trans in university, and everyone reacted really, really weirdly. Weirdly. They reacted strongly around this person. They were surprised by this, right? It's very common that people who have had the fortune of growing up in a more diverse environment, they suddenly go like, what's the big deal, right? Like, you never realize what's weird and what's normal until you see other people react. And what's, rather than weird, what's rare, right? I always tell this story of like, my brother, he's a super flamboyant man, right? Like super flamboyant. Like he's like, honey, woo! Like that since he was like this, right? Like he was like he would be like 3 years old and he would like oh my gosh, like super effeminate, right? And that for me that was my brother as the idea of man, right? And he's always been a cis man. Like he's not trans. He's a man, and he knows he's a man. And I will be like, bro, do you think you're a woman? He's like, no. And I'm like, huh. Well, then maybe I'm a woman too. And then as I grew up, I'm like, no, I'm not a woman. That's weird. Bro, do you like men? He's like, yeah, I like men. But you don't think you're a woman? No. Because having fed these weird ideas, but by media, so many wrong ideas of that, like gender and sex, they're tied to orientation and stuff like that. Because so many people misunderstood what this was all about. And they fed this wrong to me, that even though my brother was right there and I could ask him questions, I didn't understand them at all, right? So even me, who had my brother right there to ask him stuff, I wasn't understanding things at all, right? I could have figured myself out 10 years ago if I had had anyone to ask, so what does trans mean? Instead of watching Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs, which was a terrible, terrible, terrible image to have about what trans people are, you know? So that's the thing. That's why representation really, really matters. And so are you going to ask a question? Yeah. All right, last one before we move on to happy things. The speaker is telling, like, you know, like when people think representation, they're like, I put a gay person in my game. Representation. Well, there's a LGBTQIA+. There's a huge amount of letters. We could cover them, but when you put more than one person, it's like, oh my God, you're overdoing representation. That's not believable. Oh my God, you cannot put so many stuff. I'm trans, bi, and disabled. Oh my God. All my friends in school, the people I grew up with, you know, like I reconnected recently with one of my best friends from school that I knew since I was like 2 years old. He is gay and a drag queen. And it's like another one, he's bi and trans. It's like, oh my God, all of my friends are gay too. Gasp! Who could have thought? Gay people make gay friends. Unbelievable. So, you know, like, life is so rich, so diverse. There's so many of us. There's such a variety of people. Why would you want to make everyone like the same people, like the same, everything? Like, I don't get it. Oh no, the computer got locked. Christina Peter. This talk is ending up a lot more comedic than I intended. Kind of happens. I'm sorry. So anyway, I wanted to, before we ended up going to dark and stuff, I wanted to say that, you know, like, according to this article, because I couldn't find any more, even though I know it to be true, because, you know, we don't get reported on. A lot of, up to 45% of respondents to this one survey, to like 2,000 people, gaming plays an integral part in the discovery of a lot of queer people's identity. And you know, like, who isn't here, what queer people here haven't played? Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, The Sims, and like, that helped them discover their own queerness, you know, like, oh my God, I'm going to make my own character. If I make them this other gender, oh my God, what if I kiss a girl? Oh my God, I'm gay. Oh my God. You know, speaking from experience. The Sims were a very informative part of my life. The Sims made me very gay. If I wasn't gay before, I was gay after The Sims. Thank you, you know, thank you, Sims. And you know, like, games, I wouldn't be the person I'm today if I wasn't for games, if I wasn't for game dev, if I wasn't for speaking to game devs, I mean, like, oh my God, you guys are as weird as I am. Wow, you know, like, we are all very strange people making games for other people who are like us, and a lot of us want to put more queer content into them, and a lot of us live through a time when we're told, well, make games yourself then. And we said, okay, I will. So I want you all to share stuff that you learned about yourself in games, or in making games, or from other people making games. You know, I want to hear your stories of, because I've seen the faces you're making. I know you have stories. I want to hear them. Would you like to share? Okay, this speaker is sharing the fact that games art is queer. Big news. Nobody knew. Nobody knew that fine art in any department has queer people. That's very big news. No one knew. Anyone else? this other speaker shares how through VR chat, through seeing themselves in a new body, in a feminine body, brought them a new experience in which seeing themselves reflected in a feminine body immediately made them act feminine in ways such as even just the movement in the hips, even just the movement in their face, just the way they animated, brought them a feeling of euphoria that they had never experienced before. I think that's super cool. And I honestly cannot even start to recommend enough that everyone try VR at some point and see themselves in a different body, because you don't know what you're going to learn. I learned that I get super sick in VR, but but it's a great experience though. Anyone else? Yay! This other speaker shares that they got to put themselves as non-binary into their job in the industry, which is fantastic. Congratulations. And I think that's so cool. Like, every time we get to share a little piece of ourselves into our creations, it's such a wonderful feeling, because it's so easy to feel like game dev steals apart from us. You know, like creative creation. It feels like it takes and it takes and it takes. Like it steals from us. Like in the process of creation, we lose ourselves because it's exhausting. It is bearing a son. You have to take care of it. You have to feed it. Oh my God, what's on fire today? Ugh, why are you up at 3 a.m. working right now? And it takes so much of you. But when you look at it and you see yourself reflected on it sometimes, it's such a wonderful feeling. And when years down the line, when you're a new person, you look back at your work and you see pieces of yourself that you now know about yourself now. You didn't know about it. You didn't know about it then, but you know it now. And you look at it and you see, wow, I didn't know this that I know now, but I can see it in the game. I can see it. I can see pieces of it right there looking at me. It's such a cool feeling. And I really hope you can all see stuff like that in everything you make. So with that said, if there are no other stories, I want to go on to the last part because I don't know how long we have. Oh, one more.
I have a really short one.
Okay.
I played Hades.
Yes. Who hasn't? Okay.
That was an experience. For my queer self, that was it.
Person plays Hades and turns bisexual. No. No, I was saying person plays Hades and turns bisexual. Yeah. No, that was it?
That's the story.
Oh, that was the story. That was the actual story. I was just joking. Okay, whoop. Okay, so the objective, I don't know how long we have. Oh, no. The objective is to make positive the norm. People born with or in a position of... Sorry, I just turned really hard right now, and I made myself dizzy. I'm very sorry in a second here. So people born with or in a position of privilege who actively make the effort to listen, educate themselves on the issues that marginalized people face, pass opportunities they get, and use their privilege to uplift them, those marginalized people. So people who help others because they have the power to do so, those people are referred to as allies. It's a long process to become an ally. You can't just wake up one day and be like, oh yes, I'm going to save the world. You're going to be a kind of an idiot if you do that, because you're going to be here looking down on people like, I'm going to help you. That's not going to help. You're going to be looking down on people. And you don't have to look down on people to help. You have to look people in the eye. It's like, yeah, you have tools to help them that they may not have access to. But you cannot be looking at them from up. You have to be looking at them from eye to eye. This is very important. And it's a long process. And it takes practice. But you'll soon start noticing all the ways in which your life is different from that of those around you. And you learn ways in which you can help without looking down on those people. So open mic time. Again, the last one. What are some actions allies can take to make us feel more welcome? Because it's not all up to us to stand up for ourselves. Allies, you have to be proactive in letting people know that you are there for them. You can't just be like, oh, people should feel safe around me. I'm a good guy. No, you have to take steps in making people feel safe around you. One easy step, for example, is when you say, like, oh, are you married? Do you have a wife? Well, an easy one, for example, is, I'm married, I have a partner. I'd say that's a very easy one, like if you introduce yourself, my name is so-and-so, my pronouns are so-and-so, if you want to say it, like you don't have to force people to come out every time. If you take the steps to normalize things, you are helping people who are trans so much more to not have to be the odd one out. Anyone else have any ideas? So something like what? Sorry, the last part?
So besides, when you have profiles, that you have something else besides the male and the female option?
Yeah, so normalizing pronouns and anything beyond male and female helps a lot, because when you have to check, it's like male, female, and I'm like, do you have any other option beyond that? Because not many people exist. Anyone else? Because that's especially important in job applications. Anything else? Anyone can come up with?
I mean, I don't know if this you know what this character is actually about. This is really, really important.
The thing the speakers bring up is basically consultory, right? So it's very easy to think, wow, I have this really cool idea for this character. They're going to be, I don't know, disabled, for example, right? And I'm not disabled, for example. I am in particular, but I have never spoken to disabled people in my life, a disabled person in my life. And it's like, so maybe you may want to get some consultancy. Consultancy is, first of all, speaking to people of the specific group you want to represent in your story to get their opinions on the direction you want for the character, right? Because you are prone to make mistakes, because you have never had this perspective, and that's fine. We go back to privilege before. You have never had this perspective. It makes sense that you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be things you never thought of before. Makes perfect sense. But you have to be open about it. You have to be willing to be told, hey, so this idea sucks. And that's fine. If you go to like, no, my idea, it's my creative. Take a step back. Take a deep breath. Be willing to say, okay, yeah, so let's rework it. How can I make this so that it works? Bring in. You have to be open to say, maybe this is not my story to tell. Maybe I should not be the one telling this story. Maybe the story about a transgender person who gets outed as a transgender person is not my story to tell, because I'm not a transgender person and I'm not going to do it well. And you have to be willing to be told this kind of stuff. It hurts to hear, but it's stuff that's, I have to tell it a lot to a lot of people, because they're like, yeah, what do you think about this story about this LGBTQ person? And I'm like, they're bi and they get this thing, and I'm like, oh no, that's no. Can we rework? But I think that's great. I think it's super unique. No, and if I have to get fired, I'm fine with getting fired from that project in particular, if they're not willing to speak, So it's stuff that happens. Consultancy is very important. Please hire consultants, or at least more writers in your staff. Very, very important. Thank you. So yeah, top.
Yes. I have one that sometimes, for me, it feels like it's obvious, but I still get in conscious with that, and it's an intersectional manner. Remove slurs from your vocabulary. Remove what? Slurs. Slurs.
Yes,
You know, and don't use, for example, that's gay as a negative thing. Like, what? But it applies with anything regarding racial slurs, transphobic, homophobic, misogynistic.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of ableist, racist, transphobic, misogynistic, a lot of slurs in our language that are still embedded, and we have to really examine. Yes.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, not to leave it to the marginalized groups to speak up against it, but actively speak up against it if they're not from the marginalized group.
Absolutely. If you ever witness anything and you realize that there's someone getting attacked in any way, you have to make an effort to speak up. Or at the very least, after it happens, approach the person and say, are you okay? Do you need me to say something to this person who just said this right now? Because maybe they want a scene. Maybe they're like, okay, I don't want anything else happening. Maybe they just want to move on. You say, do you need me to say anything to this person right now? That's fine. Like, make sure they're okay. At the very least, that's the very least. Yes?
I just wanted to say regarding the slurs and has to do with intersectionality is that like people complain nowadays that they cannot joke anymore. And I really think that it's a joke because it's not part of their identity. And when it comes to minorities, it's not a joke because it's something you listen to very often. For example, I am Colombian and I get a lot of different jokes, like from strangers, once from a doctor, which was very weird. Because people listen to my accent and they ask me, where are you from? And I say Colombia, the one thing they go to is pain. And even from my close friends, like my closer friends here in Germany, I sometimes feel like it's not as funny as I think. So I just want to say that, like jokes are jokes when it's not offensive to anybody. And when in doubt, just don't say it. And I think that would be like better for everyone.
This speaker says that, like, if a joke is punching down at someone, if you're making someone the butt of the joke, then think, why are you saying it? Why are you making fun of someone? Why are you making the punchline? Like, think of why is this funny to you? Like, in which way is this funny to you? Why are you punching in this way? Like, because people are just like, like country, like Colombia cocaine. It's like, isn't that funny? No. Why? Why is it funny? Like, it's people just repeat these things over and over without ever stopping to think about them, and they just keep punching at the same spot. Like, don't you think this person has heard it a million times before? And that's the thing. Like, people have to stand up against the thing and be like, "Yo, that's not funny. Do you think that's funny?" If someone stands in a moment like, "Do you think that's funny?" If anyone ever did that, that person would be like, no, actually no, and they will stop. That's what we need, allies. Allies are very important. Allies help us gain certain. First, then you.
Maybe a follow-up on that. With what I heard a lot is like, this is not the space for politics. This is just, for example, this is just games. We just talk games here, not political games. But we live in a political surrounding, and for queer people, games are also political methods. So the sentence, "this is not political," is a red flag for me, and as an ally, I should never be used in any kind of space.
Well, I don't want to get into this very much in this talk, because like it's going to be kind of a pain to moderate, but this is not political. It's usually a red flag for us, because our existence is political. Our existence is very much political. So when someone says, "Oh, this isn't a political talk, this is a political game," we are like, "Oh, it's very political." It's not political means it's the politics of that we don't agree with right now, and that's a red flag for us. That's after him.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that games are like more than political, because like we are all working with games and we are all telling stories, and I think it's important then that we have a tool to give ideas to the gamers. So I think it's important that when we are writing games and stories that we are thinking about not creating or repeating cliches from films or books of the past, and don't create these discrimination ideas we all had maybe in the past.
Yes, absolutely. As the speaker says, it's very important to dissect, and that's why we have to get consultancy because there's a lot of biases we're not aware of that we keep repeating, and we keep going back to old jokes that we never even thought about. Like, why am I saying this? Why do I think this is funny? Ha 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 ha! And it's like, no, this joke sucks. It's like this is tired, really offensive stuff that I have never even thought about. Like, why is it offensive to other people? Why am I punching down on this? It's very important to get out to diversify the perspectives of the people around us in order to get new thoughts. Because none of us can really make new ideas appear out of thin air. Ideas appear out of the media we consume. We shake it in our heads, and stuff comes out, right? So that's why we need new voices all the time to get new culture, produce new, fresh thoughts. So we're going to get 2 more, and then we're going to wrap up, because I don't know how are we doing on time? We do have time. Okay, that's because I'm very worried. Okay, never mind. Then never mind. We do have time. We do have time.
I actually wanted to say something else. Since we were there was some things about the political part. I mean, there was quite a big topic when the last of us 2 came out, and people were saying that there's a political agenda, and but to me it's always weird because they think other games don't have political agenda, but if you're killing 1,000 people in the Middle East in Call of Duty, this is also a political agenda, right? It just means it's a political agenda that I don't want, right? It's something, but it's not saying that always games are in a way political because they're made by people are political, right? So there was something technical, but I think what is important this topic here is what you said, normalization.
Yeah.
Because just from my work experience, we had a team of 8 people, and 2 were openly gay, and then 1 was a trans person. And they were introduced as Jennifer, like this is Jennifer. But when they were working with us, they said, like, well, I prefer to be called Lee, actually. So, but then we just did it, right? We just called it Lee. And it was actually, but it was not such a big topic in the end. Everybody said, well, it's the way it is, right? So, I think the part of normalization is really important.
Sorry, I didn't understand very well. So they interviewed with one name and then
we had a new coworker started, and our bosses introduced us as gender. But when we were working with them, they said, I am actually trans. I want to be called Lee.
So
right?
I will ask you to never again say their name. Don't ever say their name again. Okay, but their own name, don't ever say their name. That's their dead name. You don't say their name. So me, for example, I'm fine with my name because I say, hey, I'm Sandra Maxi, that's fine. But never say their own name of a trans person without their permission, because that's called the dead name.
Yeah.
That's called the dead name is a very private person.
Yeah, we had a discussion about that. But otherwise, I could not tell you the story.
No, but you could. Like, they introduce themselves with one name and then they give me another. That's fine. You don't have to say their name. You never have to say it. That's fine. You don't have to say it. And that's fine.
Okay.
So you don't have to say it. That's completely fine. It's important to you. Like, I know a lot of people don't have this language to speak it. And that's it's for the future. You don't need to say their name. You can say the story, that's fine. They introduce themselves with one name, you have a real name, you don't say that. And you don't have to say that their name. You don't call me, that's fine. You don't have to say that their name. For the future, that's fine.
Okay.
That's cool.
So you mean last, like the first previous name?
Yeah.
Or do you mean both?
The dead name, so.
For anyone who's not familiar with trans terminology, there's a concept called dead name. the dead name is the name you are given at birth. So, for example, say I'm called, my parents assigned me the name George. And then as I grow up, I realize George is not a name that defines me, and I change my name to Maria, for example, right? George is dead. Never use George again. Without my permission, you should never, ever, 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 ever say George. Not to me, not to a third person, to anyone, never. Don't say when she was George, when he was George, never say that again, never. George is dead. Bye, George. George had a good run, but George is dead. We call Mariah. Mariah is good and fine, and we talk about Mariah. Mariah is the only person we know now, okay? That's fine. And I know it's a hard concept sometimes, but it's like, it's not just a name, it's a whole identity for us. It's a whole person for us, so it's very important, right? Okay. So that's the thing, like, so yeah. Other than that, the speaker was saying that, yeah, like, it's very important.
Maybe by that time they had no transition, right? So
but
they were still using their own the name for an application. That's what I was to say. That's why they were introduced by our bosses, like, by that name, right? Yeah. But they asked us, like, call me, leave, and then that's really what I was trying to say. Just they treat it as normal, right? Nobody was like, well, this is actually your name.
It's basically what it does. It is a story from, like, it's cool. We did it cool. It's that kind of like, it was the focus of the story of like, yeah, we did it right. And that's not the focus of the story, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it turns into like, yeah, we did it well. And that's what it comes to. When you're an ally, you want to focus on the person. Well, they wish it could be right. Because that's not what I'm talking about. But it's what happened. Okay? That's the thing. Like when you say like, oh, we took it right, it was fun, and they give it like this, and they asked to change it, and we changed it. It turns out they are into like we. And that's the mistake. That's what I'm trying to teach here. Because how we speak about what we should help others is very important. So that's a common mistake we all run into. I've done the same in other things I don't know. Because I'm very privileged for the thing that I've also run into like putting my foot in my mouth or stuff, and they're like, you said something. I've run into the same mistakes with other stuff where I'm like, oh yeah, like, so this story and like this happened with other people who's from a Marianne's background, and they're like, so you're saying you're doing this to brag. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing this to brag. They're like, no, you're doing this to brag right now. You're just speaking out yourself doing this good thing for someone else. I'm like, no, that wasn't what my intention. It's like, your intention is not the point here. It's what happened. You are telling about this cool story on something you did so right for someone else who was in a position of like, like less privileged than you. And it's like, well, that wasn't my intention, but like if that's what I did, I'm sorry. I will try to word it better next time, and that's what I teach. Then that's fine. Like you tripped a little bit, and you get up, and next time you just be more careful, and that's it. That's life. We all trip up, and we get up, and we move on. And yeah, I think the next person was you. I think.
It was part of an whole discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry for the.
We're learning a lot.
Because it's. I think it's good because this applies to like all of us. Because there isn't a single point in our lives when we aren't going to be an ally to someone else. Because again, oh no, the thing went out. So we are all intersecting with someone else in privileges. If someone is not disabled, at some point they're going to speak to a disabled person, and they're going to mess up in how to speak to them, and they're going to run into similar problems, and they're going to find themselves doing similar mistakes. And it's like, it's good to know these basics on how to speak to people of groups that we don't belong to. Allyship always has concepts that all apply in intersecting bubbles, circles, something like that. Any other stories, or do you want to share it after all, or?
So when we were talking about it being political or not being political, there's also like sometimes a discussion about tolerance and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and there are people that are, for example, I don't know, like their religious beliefs are against somebody else, or their political beliefs are against somebody else. And I think in that case, allies have to be tolerant towards intolerance. And you cannot tolerate, like, these type of behavior that is creating aggression towards somebody.
Yeah, there's something called the paradox of tolerance against intolerance, which is like if someone is actively hateful towards someone, you must not tolerate that. Which is, your freedom ends where my freedom begins. If you are attempting to hurt me, I cannot tolerate you trying to hurt me. Like if you're trying to hit me right now, I am going to grab your hand like, don't. And I have to, no. So that's why it's important to, like, you must not tolerate anyone to, if someone was to right now scream at you, I will have to be like, excuse you, get right now out. It's very important to not tolerate intolerant people. So yeah, allies have to not be like, oh, like you have to tolerate people being intolerant to you, that's okay. No. But that is part of a larger discussion too that we don't really have time to cover right now here. I did want to finish here with a very simple lesson that I think has done a lot for my life and my time in companies, which is, if you're not actively working on your company culture, it will become toxic. This is a community management fact. If you're not putting the steps to make people feel welcome, to make people feel like they belong, be it disabled people, people of color, queer people, no matter who, if you're not taking the steps to make them feel welcome, your company will become toxic. The most low people will become the ones who will set the culture of the company. This is facts. So make sure to set and work on the culture of your company. Please? And I think that's about it. Thank you so much for your time. This talk went places, lots of emotions, pat on your back for all of you. And yeah, that's all. Any questions? I don't know. You can tell me.
Maybe I have a question, but more not really towards you, but most likely in general. I was thinking about this before, but it wasn't really coming up. Would you think that in your company it would help? Because I'm not sure myself. That it would help to actually ask, for example, management or HR, if it would be possible to not be asked but just do it, to have, for example, workshops or kind of talks from people about these kind of topics to actually help communicating and also educating the company and also all developers to bring awareness, but also to analyze them with it.
Gina, Gina is asking if it will be possible to have workshops to help train, upper management and staff on this kind of topics. And it's actually something that does happen. There's allyships, workshops given by people who are far more qualified than I am, like actual doctors. I can't remember right now the name, but I actually attended one last year for GDC. And it was a talk on allyship, which was fantastic, in fact. A lot of the concepts I learned from this one came from it. And I would really recommend, like, there should never be any upper management that doesn't take allyship courses to have a firm grasp on how to speak to any group. Because, we really, it's a very delicate thing, because you have to deal with the power dynamics. You have to deal with groups that you are not familiar with, so many perspectives you're not familiar with. And I really think everyone should take them. Even if you're not upper management, you should just take allyship workshops. Yep.
I think, of course, there shouldn't be like a level of harassment where this should be needed, but the thing is that like a lot of people don't grow up with diverse or marginalized people around them, and a lot of them, at least what I read also in the private chats and so on, but also sometimes really offended that people are afraid to ask, and such informative events could take away a lot of, insecurity about these topics. So I would say from my personal opinion, maybe not towards like fear on topics, but more towards, like being female, etc. I think it definitely can be something positive to have these kind of workshops.
Yeah, speaker says that it can be, it's very awkward, it's very scary to ask questions because you're afraid of being hated for not knowing, like, what if I ask about this kind of stuff and they hate me for asking, like for any topic, especially like asking about queer questions or anything like that. And I can see that, I can see how scary it is because, I grew up in a very conservative environment in a small town. I didn't know anything. I didn't have any reference beyond TV. I had to Google my things. I had to be like, how does gay people sleep together? So, not the best education, right? So it's very scary, but I think that it's very enriching to have spaces where you can ask without judging. It's very because the moment you get said anything, you are like, oh no, what if they hate me? What if they hate me now? Because our brains are geared to fight and flight. Everything goes fight and flight. It's like, if I get answers right now, it means they hate me, which is normal. That's how our brains work. But it's very important to grow as a person, to get that moment of fear over and just sort of get answers and start growing as a person. So,
yeah, also around this topic, not really a question to you, but more like to every one of you, because we recently also had the topic of consultancy, and I started to wonder if there is some kind of platform where people gather who offer to be a consultant for those topics, for example, disabilities or gender or sexuality, because when we approached that topic, we had to look around, like, we have to find a person of that group who's willing to talk about it and who is able to do consultancy and is comfortable with consulting. Because, for example, if I want to know, is my character who is disabled portrayed correctly? I can't just come up to a disabled person and be like, hey, I have some questions, because that would be intrusive and not okay. But yeah, do we have some kind of platform where that is possible to offer?
this person is asking if anyone knows, like, you know, like a source for finding consultants. My answer will be Twitter, because there's a lot of people who just write it in their bios, like consultant, and you can look up like disability consultant, you look it up in Twitter and you can find a lot of people. But beyond that, I wouldn't know at all. Google, maybe. I say Google a lot. I should start getting paid by Google. I don't know. What? Yeah, DuckDuckGo. 1 second.
Just for writing. I don't know if it's for consultancy exactly, but a lot of writing resources. There's a website called Writing the Other, and that's a lot of resources for all kinds of writers. But I can be fun about that. We had that.
Yeah, I just wanted to try to somewhat of an answer because the German games lobby has on the website of the games.de a section about diversity, and it's far from like complete or perfect, but it's quite good starting so that. And I think that it kind of depends where you're located and what is the target group, but there are a lot of organizations for different kinds of intersections of the sexuality that you can go for. So if you need consultant for disabilities, for example, there are organizations that perhaps that you can ask for help.
So apparently gameslobby. What else? Games. The games.de? DV. Oh, games.de. Okay. There you go, games.de. So I think that should be about it, probably. I hope so, because my throat is super dead. So thank you all. And yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to close this very quickly. Thank you for your time, for your attention and your questions. And of course, thanks to our speakers for this educational and interesting topics. Since the questions have become more general, you can feel free to mingle now and ask questions to the speakers or just network a little bit with each other. We also have a bit of food for you, which is kindly sponsored by the Mediennetzwerk, like everything here, basically. So, yeah.